joined a little bit late. Running from another meeting. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Madison Zulowitz. I am the event coordinator here at Dynamics User Group. So I help plan our local and regional meetups like this one. So excited to be joining you on the call today and to hear about the speaker. It'll be a definitely very interesting call and presentation. So excited to be joining. So a little bit about Doug. We are a free community for users, implementers, and resellers of Microsoft business applications. We mainly focus on Dynamics 365, GP, and Power Platform, and we are here to help you grow professionally and personally in your careers. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Savannah. All that we ask is that we keep these sessions and local meetups solely educational. So please no sales pitches. We want people to come here to learn, and that is it. We also encourage everybody in the chat or in the meeting to engage with your speakers, ask questions. We want to keep these meetups successful and growing, and the best way to do that is to stay engaged and ask questions, and you're going to get the most out of it if you start asking some questions. So Dynamics User Group, or DUG for short, we have lots of different programs. We have forums, webinars, conferences, our local meetups, regional meetups, a skill up program, a YouTube. So literally anything and everything you could possibly think of, we probably offer it, and more than likely for free. So we have lots of great options to go and look on our website if you were ever interested in gaining some more knowledge. We have lots of different outlets for that. I would also suggest checking out our YouTube channel because you can see local meetups like this one that are recorded. We always post them to our YouTube channel, so really great way to gain some education. And we have our 2025 regional meetups coming up this year. So these are a little bit larger in scope than this one. They are full day events with multiple different product focuses and multiple different education sessions throughout the day. And we usually include lunch and a social hour at the end. So it's really great networking as well as educational opportunities. But we will be going, do you mind going back one slide, Savannah? I think I know these off the top of my head, but I don't want to be missing one. So we actually just had our Southeast Regionals. I need to update this slide, but we just had Southeast Regionals last week in Tampa, Florida. It was awesome. We ended up getting actually 152 registrations. So had a great turnout there. And we have our Northeast Regionals coming up. This is actually updated to Philly. We're going to be going to Philly in March, early to mid-March. So excited about that. We're going to Canada in June. We're going to West Africa in Ghana in July. Then you can go to the next one. We're going to East Africa in Kenya, also in July. I'm personally excited about that because I have never been to Kenya and Ghana, so very excited. And then we're going to be going to Colorado in August, Ohio in August, and Texas in September. So if any of these areas are local to you, we would definitely suggest joining. They're free events and really just a great way to gain some education. And we have our 2025 DynamicsCon coming up in Chicago, Illinois from May 13th to the 16th. This will be a multi-day event with full days of education and networking and lots of fun in the community. So I would suggest coming if you are able to. I'm sure that a few of you on the call have been before and can say some amazing things about it. So excited to see some of you there. And if any of you have any questions for me or about Doug, feel free to reach out to me. Oh, Belinda said that she's joining, so excited about that. That'll be fun. We're excited to have you there. Awesome. Savannah's going to be there too. Great. Well, thank you guys so much. Like I said, if you have any questions for me, feel free to just ask in the chat. But I'll go ahead and pass it back over to you, Savannah.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so I love Doug. That's why we're all here. Just really quickly, if you guys don't know me, my name is Savannah Dill. I run the Doug Indiana chapter, and I host a variety of in-person and online events which can bring people from all over the globe together, which I think is just awesome. Today we have Belinda Allen speaking, and she is a true community rock star. When I first got into the community, she was one of the very first people I connected with. So it's been really great to have her as a mentor and a resource. So that being said, I will pass it on over to you, Belinda, and we can get going.
Oh, you just about made me cry. So that was sweet. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Belinda Allen. I have been in the community, I feel like forever and a day. And so this is going to be a fun session for me. I'll explain my roots in just a minute, but I am, for the most part, all fabric now. All fabric. Of course, that includes Power BI. Power BI is a part of fabric. And I do a little AI as well. So we're going to be talking about 10 reasons why you'd consider moving to the Power BI from Power BI Pro or Power BI Free or Power BI Premium to Microsoft Fabric. All right, so this is a little bit about me. I currently live in South Carolina, so in a teeny town. Although I lived in New York City longer than anywhere else in my life, the town I live in now is about a third the population of the building I lived in New York, so it's kind of crazy. Some of you who may know me, I had my own, or I hate to say have heard of me, but it sounds so egotistical. If you've heard of me, you might know me from the company that I own with my husband, Smith and Allen Consulting. But a little over a year ago, my husband had quasi-retired. He's working a little more now, or a good bit more now. I started working with an enterprise level company. They approached me, they intrigued me, and I have been delighted to be with them ever since. So I work now with iLink Digital. I'm the director of enablement. And so this is right up my alley of things I like to talk about. I've been an MVP at Microsoft for, I'm in my 13th year now, so 12 and a half years. I've had 13 awards. The first 8 years were for Dynamics GP, and the last 5 have been for, I feel like I have that wrong. I think it's 6 and 7, but I'm not sure, have been for Power BI. Oh, no, I have it right there. It's 5 years GP, 8 years Power BI. I thought GP and Power BI were mixed up. So I have been really deep in Power BI since its beginning. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. I did put a link to my my slide deck so you can have all the information. But here is my new email address, and I have this X/Ms. Belinda Allen. You could pretty much find me on LinkedIn or any place that you go by looking at Ms. Belinda Allen. So the X just represents a variable. Yep, I'm a geek. Just a little bit about the company I work with so that you know why I immediately said, yes, I want to go for an enterprise company. We're a Microsoft featured partner for Fabric and for AI. We do a couple other things as well, but we are completely engrossed, and we work with some mid-sized companies, but a lot of Fortune 1000 companies, a few Fortune 500 companies. And so it's kind of, as I am older now, been in technology over 30 years, then at that point, it's this is kind of like a fun way for me to ride out into retirement in several plus more years. So that's just a little bit about us. So our agenda today, we're going to go pretty quick and fast. That's why I didn't want to have a whole lot of slides set up. The one reason you'd want the slides is I do have a few resources in them. Feel free to ask questions. I might end up answering them at the end, because I'm going to go pretty fast and furious, but I'm going to show you a lot of screenshots, and we're going to go in and do a lot of different things. I think you're going to have fun with it. So we'll start with the introduction. We'll go through the 10 reasons, and I'll do as many demos as I could squeeze in, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A. Okay. Reason number 1 is enhanced data integration. And so I do have a couple slides on this, and some of these slides that I have in my system come directly from Microsoft's workshop, Fabric Analyst in a Day. It's a free workshop, so I normally walk the very straight and narrow about not doing any sales pitches or promotional things. So, but I did include the next 2 workshops that our company will be doing. I'll be moderating one of them, answering questions, and on the other one, I'll be actually doing the workshop. So if you wanted to learn more about Fabric and attend those. Okay, so this is one of the slides. Look at all the different data sources that we can bring in. And so there are a lot of different data sources. And Microsoft said, you know what, we're going to take a look at all these different data sources. And as we're looking at these different data sources, they're like, okay, what are people doing when they're working with their analytics, when they're working with Power BI? It's like, okay, in Power BI, they're managing data governance on top of it. Data governance mostly being making it easier for people to use Power BI. And by that, I mean making sure they have access to what they need and not so much access that it's confusing to them, or they could be dipping their toe in somewhere that they shouldn't be. So with those data governances, frequently, and in the case with all of you, they're working directly with the Microsoft Cloud. In your case is Dynamics 365, or potentially even Power Platform, or maybe even using some of the other Microsoft Office 365 applications as well. They're accessing all kinds of operational databases, and then they're using all kinds of additional intelligence platforms like Cosmos DB, machine learning, or Azure AI, maybe even Azure Databricks, SQL Server, and then, of course, when they're dealing with all these things, Microsoft realized they're having to do licensing in all these different places. They're having to maintain governance in all these places, and it could be quite complex. It is not unusual. Before I started working with enterprise level customers, and I was squarely in the SMB, the small to medium business market, it was not unusual at all for me to have 3 or 4 different data sources in a Power BI report. And when I mean data sources, I mean maybe Business Central or F&O or CE, and maybe 10 different tables in there, along with some other application, maybe something, some kind of social media as well, or a manufacturing system, or a different CRM system. But whatever the case may be, membership systems, all kinds of different systems, whatever it was, they were having to manage all these different data sources all over the place. And it was quite complex, quite difficult for customers to manage, and it was pretty costly having to deal with all these different licensing issues that come along. So, that was like, why isn't it clicking? But I see it now. I just wasn't clicking on the little animation there. Okay, so Microsoft said, okay, we need to do something about it. So we have all these different analytical services of things like Cosmos DB, machine learning inside of and Power BI, maybe even SSRS. We need a way to create a unified stack, put them all together. And then all these different disparate data sources, maybe we need to organize our data so it's technically all in one place when we're accessing it. And then we have all these different isolated applications that we're working with. Maybe we need to put that together and unify that experience. And then, of course, if you wanted AI, you had to bolt on generative AI, which is what a lot of people are using. So why not just build in generative AI? And so all of these things is like, how do we make this easier? So Microsoft comes up with Fabric. Now, after Ignite just a couple months ago, like I think it was 2 to 3 months ago, this slide is changing, but I like the way it explains it out for now for Fabric. So they're grouping a few things together, and there won't be quite as many. But Microsoft said, okay, first of all, for all these different things that people are doing, these different experiences, all these different tools they're using, let's unify them into one place. And if they want generative AI, let's build it right in. So there's Copilot for Fabric, just like there's Copilot for everything else. And then we're going to talk about putting the data in one place. We'll be talking about that together, and that's one lake. And then we have Microsoft Purview, which is data governance. And the data governance can manage all of these different disparate data systems right from one locale, because it's managing one lake and therefore managing all these different experiences. And it's these different experiences that make Microsoft Fabric so cool. And you'll notice Power BI is squarely there. Power BI is our main analytics tool. It is what we're using to analyze our data, to get information from our data, and to help us become or maintain being a data-centric organization where we're using our data to make decisions on what we're doing. Now, these other experiences are just different elements of it. We have Data Factory, where we can do, a lot of people will refer to this area as CI/CD, constant integration, constant integration, constant, if someone could think of the last word, it just left my mind.
Development?
I was thinking development, but I don't think that's it. Deployment, I think it might be constant deployment. I don't know.
Yeah,
I gotta look it up.
It's deployment.
Okay, yeah, that's what was popping in my head. But every now and then, it's just like when you spell a word, a simple word, and you're like, that doesn't look like it's spelled right, and it is. It's just something that's going crazy with your brain. Okay, so that's what that's typically used for. We also have data engineering and a lot of data engineering tools. I'm going to be talking and doing a demo of one in particular for you. But you could do things programmatically using something we call notebooks, which is built on Apache Spark. By the way, one thing that Microsoft did that was pretty cool is, instead of developing all their own very unique, we built it here thing, like they do a lot of times, they are taking advantage of industry standard tools that are meant for data and meant for the world of AI and the world we're moving into. And so I applaud their efforts on that. And using Apache Spark is one of those tools. Then we have the ability to have warehouses, because a lot of people are using warehouses on their data lakes. We have a warehouse in Fabric, and we have a lake house, and we even have an event house, as I'll talk about in just a moment there. But then we also have data science, and data science is where we could do things like machine learning. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today as well. But real-time analytics is, I'm seeing a lot of interest in that. And real-time analytics, our company's actually implemented that. And a good example of that is there's a major fast food chain. And if you go there and you order something, I don't care where you are in the world, but if you go to this particular fast food chain and you order something, it goes from their point of sale system, it updates our real-time analytics data instantly. So that's kind of what real-time analytics are for. It's for big data, where data could be coming in very, very quickly. Now, some people will bring in all their accounting data using real-time analytics, and they only bring it in once a day, and they're, it's really more near real time than real time. I don't consider that real time, but that's a matter of semantics, I guess. If you know who Will Thompson is at Microsoft, I'm always on his case just a little bit about that. And he's like, I know, but yeah. Okay. Power BI. Power BI, still there, still exactly as you know it. Doesn't change. So this is one cool thing. If you're already using Power BI in some way, shape, or form, You already have knowledge on how to get to your reports. And then we have this new area called partner industry workloads. And if you've seen this before, you might say, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't there before. There was something called data activator. Did that fall off the list? And the answer is no. It belongs to real-time analytics, and data activator is, I'm going to just do an oversimplified explanation. It's very similar to Power Automate, but instead of looking or alerts in a Power BI dashboard, but instead of looking at one value, a scalar value, one single value, it looks across a whole visual and analyzes everything in the visual. So it's pretty cool. One of the neat things about this this concept that we're in right now, this enhanced data integration, is the fact that you don't have to be using elements of real-time analytics in order to use the data activator component, or I don't have to be using machine learning if something else is in there. So you could cross paths. The best example is pipelines, which exist in CI/CD or Data Factory. It could be used in any of these elements. So very, very powerful. Okay, so I just want to show you a brief demo of how this looks. So I'm going to go into my Power BI report. You'll notice if you haven't signed up for a trial and you want to, I encourage you to do so, but be careful about two things. I'll caution you on that now. All you have to do to sign up is go into your Power BI, and then you'll see an option to sign up for a trial. The trials are 60 days. For over a year now, Microsoft has just been renewing it if you play with it. Okay, if you do not see the ability to add a trial here, that's because someone in your Power BI admin has prevented you from having trials. So you'll need to talk with them about turning that on. And it'll automatically prompt you to renew. First, it'll try to get you to buy, and then you say no, and then it'll come in and say, okay, you want to renew your trial? And then you could say yes. What you have to be careful about is if you create a workspace, like you're used to in Power BI, and I'm assuming you know a little bit about Power BI as we talk. So I'm just going to bang in something here. You'll want to go into advanced and make sure that you have your pro mode turned on, because everything will automatically default to the trial. Okay, so that's something that you want to know. Or if you're in premium per user, it'll default to the trial. Okay, so just wanted to warn you about those two different things. All right, so what makes it a little different? If I come down to the navigation pane on the left and click on Power BI, then I have the ability, here are all my different experiences that I just showed you. And I can, plus a brand new one, they've added in a database, which I think it's kind of like Fabric's version of Dataverse, kind of, but it's built off SQL. So I haven't played around with that enough yet but I guarantee you that's going to bump something off my 10 list very, very soon. Okay, so if I click on Microsoft Fabric, I can see my different Fabric experiences right here. And then I could go to any particular page. Now, I did point out industry solutions. I'll talk more about that later. There's also some documentation and ability to explore community. So these are some of the different things that you can go in and do. If I go in, for example, to data engineering, I could see, ignore this piece right now, but I could see over here, I could create a lakehouse, I could create a notebook, I could create an environment, a Spark job definition, a data pipeline coming in as API GraphQL, and I could even import a notebook into my notebooks. So I could see all the different things that I could create. You'll notice now that I'm in the data engineering view, and to get back to straight up Power BI, I just click there and I could go into Power BI. So that's how all these different experiences work. Now, if data analytics or advanced analytics, we have a couple things, and I'm about to do a real demo for you in just a moment, besides just showing you a few screenshots. This is a screenshot for machine learning. I'm going to show of hands, is anybody using machine learning or played with it before? You could either use the thumbs up in the chat or use the raise your hand view. Okay, one person. Okay, thank you, Marcia. You're the rock star today. Yeah. Um, thank you for that. Okay, I'll give you a brief description of what machine learning is, and it has existed in premium already, but machine learning is um, basically it's kind of, oh, thank you, Bono, I appreciate that. Yeah, okay. Machine learning is basically kind of what it sounds like. You create a model and you train the model, and it learns from your data and then can interpret. And you do that by using an algorithm. So here's the example. When machine learning first came out, I saw it in preview. It got so excited. I actually did quite a few presentations on it. And then I'll tell you why I stopped with it in just a moment. But so the example that I used to do is I was a used car dealership, and I had all kinds of metadata on my vehicles that I sold. I knew the make of it, I knew the model, I knew the year, I knew the color, I knew the kind of car it was. Was it a sedan? Was it an SUV? Was it a truck? Blah blah blah. I had all different metadata pieces about it, and I knew how much I sold it for. So a new car comes in, and rather than me just guessing where one of two, there are three possible things that could happen. One, I could possibly guess a correct value or good value to start with. Maybe experience will teach me that, but you never know, right? We don't know, because it's also possible I could be leaving money on the table, that I've underpriced it. So you might think, hey, I priced it right, it's sold, but I might have underpriced it. I could also overprice it, which means it might end up sitting on the lot a while, and then I have to cut the price of it. So, and meanwhile, the value of the car is going down, just sitting on the lot. So I want something to help guide me on to what price I should do. So I want to make my decision on how to price this used car using my data. So what I do is I go in and I key in the metadata about this car. It's a Toyota, it's a Camry, it's silver, it's whatever, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I get all that data in, and the machine learning model goes, oh, I predict it'll sell for this price. And based off of my previous sales. So now I have a number to start with. Maybe I want to go up on that just a little bit. But that is what it does. Now, it does that because when you build your model, when you say, okay, in the machine learning, you could see here it's creating an experience to build a model. This is the Power BI, or when you're in Power BI or the Power BI service, just like I just showed you, you would go in and create a new item under analytics, and you have experiments right here. So I'm creating a model that says evaluate the color, evaluate the make, blah, 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 and use this data set of my past data to train yourself. And then you tell it what algorithm to use. Now, why did I stop doing this? Because I thought, okay, this is really easy. And machine learning itself, putting in the fields is very easy. What's hard is knowing what algorithm to choose. So I thought I would be smart. Here it is. I bought this book from Amazon that looks like a kindergarten book, Algorithms Made Easy. It looks like a kindergarten book. It reads like an MIT dissertation. So I realized very quickly, okay, I am not an algorithm type person. I'm going to say that for the real brains. And I kind of backed off of ML. But one of the cool things is you can and they did this in premium, you could let it do a lot of the work for you. This is still, some of these areas are still very low code. And you could say, come up with the algorithm that best suits me. So there are some things you could do like that. So that's one really cool thing. Another thing that you could do is utilize those notebooks, those Apache notebooks that I talked about, particularly using the programming languages Py and R. And apparently I'm one of the few people that never learned Python because of a very stupid reason. And the stupid reason was I hate snakes. And I know that is really stupid. I know software is not snakes, but I stayed away from it. It was only when I started learning it after I got into Fabric that I realized that it was named after Monty Python. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's very, very different. And so had I known that, I probably would have jumped in right away too with 2 feet. Okay, so let's get into looking at this a little bit. So started to pull up my calendar. That's not what I want to do. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, and you'll notice that I'm going into workspaces because workspaces are still used in Fabric. That's how we go in and define some of the things in Fabric. I'll talk about this later. I'm going to go ahead and close that up. And I'm going to open up a notebook here. And in this one, I did a very poor job naming my notebooks. So what you get when you get a notebook is you get these sale codes and you tell it, when I'm working, I want to work with either this lake house or this warehouse. Warehouses are something that have newly been added. Okay, and you don't need both. You could pick one or the other, or you can use them together. But I'm pulling in and looking at my data that's in a lake house. And you get these code snippets, and you could even add some markup code so that you can make a little more explanation as to what's going on. Like first, I'm going to install the library called Profit. Okay. So that's my markup language. There it is. I probably could have made it a little fancier if I wanted to. I could have come in and said, instead of doing paragraph, do header 2. There we go. So you could see how you can create those libraries. So this little code snippet, this is just, if you're familiar with Python, you don't have to know Python, by the way, to be able to use this. If you know T-SQL, I'll show you how you could use that. But this is using a technology called Apache Spark that allows you to write languages using these codes. So here I'm installing my Profit library. And then in here, I am creating some functions using SQL code, .SQL. You could see right here. And I'm getting the month and the year from one of my data sets. And then I'm also installing the pandas library, which is another really valuable library. And I'm going to skip some of what this is doing. But here you could see this one, I'm creating a data frame. And I like to think of data frames. It's basically like rows and columns. I think of it as a virtual table while you're working in running a set of code. And here you can see, if you know SQL, very, very SQL centric here. I'm actually running spark.sql and doing a select statement, select star from, and then this is the name of the table that's in my lakehouse. And then a couple other things that I'm doing, I'm using, actually, let me come up here. I'm using another library, a plot, where I'm plotting it out. Where's that one? Oh, I'm not sure where I had that one, but anyhow, so I'm actually creating some visuals that I could use to analyze, to look at my sales data. Here I can see a trend. Here's a seasonal trend by month. And then now, I know you've probably seen the line visual in Power BI and saw that you could have anomalies and you could have forecasts. But I'm going to knock your socks off with this one. So here I have the line is actually the forecast that it learned. It trained itself based off of my data, picking algorithms. The shaded area is what it forecasted. It expected with a high and low, so with a margin, so it gives you a margin of error. And the dots are my actual, because I only have it by month. These are my actual months of sales data. So I could literally see, like, this is an anomaly, this is an anomaly. And then I am forecasting 12 months into the future. And you're like, okay, yeah, we got that. So why is this so cool, Belinda? I'm going to skip down a little bit because, oh, by the way, here's some SQL code. I told you I'd show you SQL code. This is using Spark SQL. So you could use Python, Scala, which is just for Spark, Spark SQL, Spark R, or HTML. So when you choose Spark SQL, it puts %% SQL, we call that magic. And then this is, you can see literally SQL, T-SQL. Okay, so what it's doing, I'm selecting my table and running it, and then it is actually creating a table for me. It's creating a table in my lakehouse and putting in the forecast as a table called sales forecast. So unlike Power BI by itself, where you have that visual that just shows you graphically where it is, now I have a table for each month that tells me the high range, the low range, and the expected value of my sales forecast. So I can create more visuals that use that data. So that's pretty powerful because that's something I did purely programmatically within the system, and it can keep going. Yes, thank you, the Matplotlib library. Yep, very, very cool. Okay. Yeah, I could tell you're a Python person, so you're probably going, oh, that's pretty cool. I get what you're doing there. So that's pretty nifty. Then we also have something called, let me go into a different workspace and let me find the Power Platform conference one. Okay, here. So this is another one that we could use. In this one, I'm actually creating a notebook that will come in and document my data. So it's looking at my semantic model and it's going, okay, here are all your tables. And are the tables hidden or not? Or are they hidden? Nope, they're not. None of them are hidden. They're a data category of some of the tables and the fact that they're all tables. Here I'm getting a list of all my fields and the data types for these fields and whether or not they're unique. So I'm getting all of that, which is pretty cool. Here I only have 2 measures in this. This is something, a whole fabric piece that I did live, a live session where I created in an hour a whole data set. And I had 2 people explaining it behind me while I was doing it. So I only created 2 DAX measures, but here are my DAX measures. I could literally see the text of the DAX measures right here. Somewhere in here, I can switch and make that bigger, I think, but that's my DAX measures. And then here I have my relationships, whether it's one direction or more. And here is a visual of my relationship. So I can do all kinds of things. You'll even notice that some of the other things I can do here, I exported a table to Excel, one of my tables. I actually did that as part of my Excel. So there's a lot of different formatting up or analytics that we can do on top of that. Scalability and performance are another thing. Now, this is probably the single biggest thing. Faster, and when I'm talking about this specifically, something that Power BI Pro users feel is the refresh of the data or the complexity of doing any kind of work in Power Query while they're building a data model. So faster and separate refreshes. So what do I mean by this? There are multiple ways we can get access to refresh our data on the left. And so I'm just going to talk you through these, and then I'm going to go in and show some of these different refreshes to you. So one thing that we have is we have direct query. Now, direct query only works with a small amount of data sets. It is the speed of importing data in Power BI with the live data aspect of a direct connection. So you can correct directly, especially if you have like Azure SQL Server, Dataverse, your data's in Dataverse, you can connect directly to Dataverse data and not have to worry about refreshes at all because it's always going to be live. And it has the speed of an import. I know in Power BI, I've built quite a few direct queries to Dataverse, and it always has that is probably only fractions of seconds, but that users feel that it's agonizing to that to do that. If you don't believe me, go somewhere where you only have 1 or 2 bars on your cell phone and do anything. You'll just be like, oh, I'm tortured. And that's exactly what it feels like. But we also have some other methods. So we don't have to go the traditional route of Power Query itself getting our data. Copying with pipelines. If you do a pipeline, you can copy the data in. That is lickety split fast. Mirroring databases. So some data sources, you can keep a full mirrored copy of the database in Fabric. It is super fast. It is what we call near real time, because it will, you don't have to schedule a refresh on that at all. So it will just go out regularly and look for any new data and bring that in. So initially you bring everything in, and then it just goes in and looks for new data, looks for new data, looks for new data, and brings it in. And the near real time could be real data anywhere from 15 minutes to like 30 seconds or less. So you're still looking at data, but it'll get the latest data constantly. So unlike that direct query where you're waiting for the visual to populate, you'll see data that is in there at that time. And then the next time the visual refreshes, it'll get the latest data and so forth. And then there's ways to programmatically refresh with notebooks, depending on what method you're using. So using Python or whatever the case may be, you could go in and get data that way. With Python, you can simply go in like an API and get data and then save it into the Lakehouse if that's what you want to do. That's another way of doing it. We also have data flows, which is a Power Query method of getting data. It's faster than Power Query in Power BI. And frankly, it has a lot of functionality. It's much cooler. It's not a one-for-one relationship, but almost everything is there. I haven't found anything that made me go, oh, I can't use data flows. That's another way that you can get it. So let's see what I mean. Now, as I talk about this, one of the things I'm talking about is the separation of compute and storage. I'm going to go back to my other session here and then, or my other workspace. And so I'm going to go into like the data flows. So here I have 6 different sources of getting my data in. And in this one, these are all going to be things that I pretty much brought in. If I click right here, it's going to open up data flows and I'll be able to see my data flow. Now, in the Power BI desktop, when you're creating a semantic model, you would have to bring all 6 of those data pieces in to the same Power BI file in order to get them into your semantic model. Okay, what I'm saying is you do not have to do that when you're working with Fabric. You can bring them in individually, and it is waiting to pull up. I don't know why it's taking longer to refresh. This is getting data from a GitHub. It shouldn't take very long at all. But you can create all of these. You could create all of these and work with them individually. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to leave this running. Well, maybe not. Let me close out. Yes, I want to exit. There we go. Okay. So back in the workspace, under my data flows, I could come in and say, all right, for this one, I'm going to go into settings for just my date. And I am going to schedule my credentials and schedule my refresh time. Now this date one, maybe I only needed to update once a day. So I'm going to choose my time and my time zone, just like you're used to seeing Central. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. All right. And then I'm going to schedule my refreshes. So here I'm going to do a daily one, and maybe I'll get it at 1 in the morning. So now this one, the date table is coming in at 1 in the morning. My products, maybe I need that to refresh more frequently. So I'm going to come in and say, I'm going to pretend I set that. And I'm going to come in and say, I need this to refresh at maybe 3 in the morning. Then maybe I want to get it again at 10 in the morning. And then maybe again at 2 p.m. and so forth. And I could bring in these individual pieces into my semantic model separately. Or so I can schedule the refresh for them separately. Now that's quite the big deal because the refreshes will be much, much shorter. Okay, so that's another thing that you can do that's going to be helpful. And then as you're working on the data separately to transform the data, then you're only working with that one piece. So if it is sales that's taking so darn long, let me come in, wait on that to change. If sales is what's taking so darn long, why? Then I don't have to worry about sales to refresh in the background while I'm working on it in Power Query. I could work on the one little piece by itself that isn't taking any length of time at all. So that's another thing that we can do that make the refreshes significantly faster and separates them out. Okay. Advanced collaboration, I'm not going to get into this, but we do have the ability to share work in GitHub, and they're adding in more places as well so that multiple people can collaborate on the reports at the same time. Security and compliance, this is Microsoft Purview. I'll show you where Purview is in the deck. You'll be able to see it is definitely part of built into Fabric. And so everything that's in Fabric will be included. Under government and insights, you can see, and Purview is in preview right now, but you could come in and see, okay, my activity has been, because I haven't been using it, has been disabled, but that's fine. But I could come in and start checking out my data and see what people are using. I can encourage with my endorsements what people are using, and then I can grant security to this as well. So there are a lot of different aspects in Microsoft Purview that I can take advantage of using. I do have some more demos. I'm not done with the demos yet, but I do want to talk about cost efficiency. Some of you may be thinking that, oh, yes, thank you. It is great for cleaning up workspaces too. Yeah. Oh, people are into workspaces all the time. And then they use my workspace. My workspace should only be for learning, never put real data in there. Okay, cost efficiency. You might be thinking, okay, that's a joke, Belinda. I know Pro is $10 a month, and I've heard big numbers for Microsoft Fabric. Okay, in my deck, I have links that, and I'll share some of them in the chat with you as well if you don't want to get the deck. But couple things I want to point out. First of all, this F2 SKU and the F4 SKU, the lowest one starts at about $200 a month, and then everyone will need a $10 a user a month one. So it is not that expensive to start if you don't need, if you can use the amount of capacity in the core number of cores it uses. It is the F64, which is where magic starts to happen, but the minimum price for that is $5,000 a month. Okay, so how could this be cheaper? Well, depending upon how many users you have and what other Azure tools you may be using. Remember, this is Fabric, so those Azure pieces are all unified into a single platform and contained as part of the Fabric licensing. So you can eliminate some of those licensing, like especially like data pipeline, machine learning, and some of those other pieces as well. The other thing I want to point out, if you have a F64, this is the lowest SKU number that users with a free license can consume reports. So unlike Pro or anything F32 or down, everybody, people who just look at reports and use reports, and people who do development, they require that $10 user a month license. At F64, people who consume reports only, even if they are, using visuals like Q&A and some of the AI visuals that are built in, they could use the free license to get access to it. And they'll still work in their teams, they'll still work in PowerPoint and still work in all their other locations. And that's because they're assigned to a workspace that has the fabric capacity of F64 or higher. So there is a point where it works. Now, if you need help deciphering all these SKUs, then I would recommend the site Data Witches. This is my teammate and one of my dear friends, well, both my dear friends, Stephanie Bruno and Microsoft's Shannon Lindsay, who tried to make it easier to help dig through it. And this F64, if you are a premium, this would be the equivalent of the P1 SKU. And I do want to point out, we are already in 2025 now. So from this point forward, there are no more premium SKUs available. So everyone will be moving to a fabric SKU. Okay, so I do want to point that out as well. And it's a F64 where all the fabric copilots start digging in. So for a lot of people, even at this lower level, it starts saving money, even at that $200 a month. And the reason for that is because of the additional add-on pieces for Azure. And the answer to the question, does F64 have Copilot? Yes. It has all the copilots that you can have, that users can actually go to and describe the report they want. And it'll use your built semantic model to build the report for them. And then they could even go in and say, hey, the visual in the bottom left corner, can you change that from a bar to a pie and change the color scheme? And it would Copilot would actually do it. And Copilot will also document your code, even I believe even the notebook code. So pretty powerful to do. And again, it's some of these licensing. SQL's not included with it, nor Azure SQL Server nor Azure SQL, but a lot of these other pieces are included with it. And then there's even more licensing included. So that's another reason for that. Now, OneLake, I'm going to skip. This one doesn't have a demo either, but I'll have a couple slides. Where does Microsoft put the data? Microsoft did something similar to OneDrive for Office 365. They built a single place for all of our languages, and they used the format, they call it OneLake, and it actually deploys itself as soon as you create Fabric, right? As soon as you get into Fabric, the OneLake is set up. And OneLake is where you store all your data. It keeps track of all your workspaces and the data that's in that workspace, the data you're using for your semantic model. And they like to liken it to a OneDrive. Now, what's cool about it is you bring in your data, the data gets stored there in its original raw data format. And then as you start doing transformations to your data, the transformations are stored, but it doesn't have to recopy the data. You could literally have, like your data stored in one workspace, and maybe Savannah manages all the customer data, right? She manages however she brought it in, notebooks, and she manages the transformations on it. But I want to use it in my workspace. I can reach out and connect to it, and I don't have to copy the data again. So the data, there's only one copy of the data. So we don't have to have the time involved for the data to move, or the processing power for the data to move, or even the data storage for the data to move. This is why you might have heard the phrase separation of storage and transformation. And this is one of the reasons why it's so powerful. And the data gets stored in a language called Delta format, or Delta Parquet format, which is an industry standard tool. And so anything that uses Delta Parquet format can read and write the data in your Fabric. And you could read and write with Fabric any other data that is in OneLake. or a Delta Parquet format. Another thing that we can do that is pretty cool. Oh, so there's no siloed data. I talked about that. It makes it easier to manage. We also have the ability for something called domains. And domains are pretty powerful. They could help with security. So we have these 3 domains: sales, marketing, and finance. And we could set up rights and permissions to data around these domains. And for each workspace, you can choose 1 domain. And then the new workspace that you create, if you assign it a sales domain, it'll automatically pick up the security for just that domain. And then you can then you can edit it later on top of that. So it makes managing your data significantly easier. And then we talked about the real separation of compute and storage, or transformation and storage. That is a very important part of it as well. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're using individual files like, Spark, or which piece you're using, it will still manage the data. 1 copy that can be read by all of your engines. Okay, and I already talked about the sharing. Okay, Microsoft integration with the Microsoft ecosystem is a huge aspect of it. And by that, we've already seen examples of this, because the examples we've seen of this, if I were, well, you could literally see right in here, I have data or pipelines. Pipeline is something else that exists. Also, you could reset up or refresh with pipelines too, if you want to. Oh, and by the way, you could refresh up to 48 times a day, which is another reason why you don't want to have to refresh the whole semantic model, but just pieces of it. Because if you have something you need to refresh much more frequently, would it be done in 30 minutes in time for the next refresh, or would you be in a perpetual state of error because it didn't have time to finish before something else kicked off? And so that's another aspect of it. So pipelines, all of these different things, all the different storage places, they're all secure right in here. Here you could see my lakehouse. I like to use SQL Server. I mentioned that. So with each lakehouse and each warehouse, you get a default semantic model. Another time I'll explain. I recommend you create your own rather than use that. But in a lakehouse, we also get a SQL analytic endpoint. Now, as I mentioned, you can utilize your T-SQL skills. And in utilizing your T-SQL skills, I'm going to come in and let's see. Go to DBO tables. Okay, so do I have views here? Yeah, I got some views here. These are views that I've created. I don't know if I created them on visuals or with text, but and my machine's going too slow to open them up. Okay, so this is one I obviously created with text, but I have the capability of, or visuals rather. If I come in and I were to open I don't know which one I'm on. I think I'm on this one. Okay, here is, oh, I want to do a pop out. I thought that was going to give me my pop out. I guess it didn't. Okay, that's all right. If I wanted to do a new SQL query, all I have to do, I could do it visually using skills I learn in notebooks, or do it straight, or using skills. The visual one would be skills I know in Power Query. I could also use skills I know in notebooks, or I could come in and just type in my command, select star from date, and run that. Run that. And I should be able to get my data appear here. So you could take advantage, there it is. So you could take advantage of your skill set. I could even come in and do group where year equals 20, that's number 2022. Now let's run that again. All right. Oh, yeah. So now I just have the year 2022. So I could select or use whatever skill I want, use whatever tool I want, and I could take advantage of that knowledge and leverage that in a major way. The last two tips are future proofing. Microsoft definitely has all its eggs in the Fabric basket. It is big data. It's great for complex data that's not big data. That is the reason why a lot of people end up having to go from Power BI Pro to Premium anyhow, or from Power BI Pro to Premium per user, is because they have complex data, or they might just hit some of the limits. Okay, so as a result, you are future proofed here. I mean, Premium, I don't know what Microsoft's going to do with Premium per user. They have said they're keeping it, but you know, I wonder, are they eventually going to have to go by way of Fabric as well? But you've got your future proofing here. It is complex. It is ready for scalability, because even if your data is not huge, and by huge I mean terabytes or petabytes, even if that's the case, you have something in place that could handle it going that big, with virtually nothing extra on top of that. And then of course the support in the community. Microsoft is doing heavy stuff in this. Doug is doing amazing things in this. They're supporting Fabric on this as well. So the community you're already a part of with your wonderful leader, Savannah, is included in there. Now, these are the 10 reasons I have. I don't know which one of these. I'll probably bump future proofing and put in the new SQL database, and I imagine it'll go a lot higher, but we'll see. Another thing reason you might want the slide decks is I have a lot of resources about some of these things individually. And if you want to connect with me directly, this goes to my link tree, and you can get access to my Twitter, my LinkedIn, or whatever you want. Plus, again, here is my email address. I know I talked a lot, had a lot I wanted to say. Do you have any more questions besides the questions that you've asked in the chat, or thoughts you want to share? I would love to hear. Oh, thanks, Madison. Did I overwhelm you all? It's a lot. Fabric's a lot. There's a lot in Fabric, but it's worth it. And you know what? Here's the thing. Fabric is not as complex as it seems on the surface. Basically, like Office 365, it's a collections of tools and services that are all about the data. And one of the tools in there is Power BI, so that we can interpret our data, analyze our data, help us become more and more data centric all of the time. So that's the big thing about Fabric. And if you think about it, oh, it's just the data. I'm going to bring in the data. I'm going to transform my data. ETL, extract, transform, and load. And you can also go through the more data you have, or the bigger your data is, the more people like to do things in medallion levels. You might have heard that phrase. I'll give you my kindergarten explanation, and then I'm going to pause one more time for final questions. And I promise, if I have anything else I want to say, I'll sit them up, shove a fist in my mouth. The thing I wanted to add was in the medallions. If you've heard people talk about bronze, silver, and gold, it's just a way we separate out the processes. And the process of bronze. Now, this is my oversimplified explanation. Everything in tech has a rule, and every rule has an exception, including this rule, because there is no exception to this rule, which is an exception to the rule that everything has an exception. Bronze layer is getting that raw data in. Silver layer, transforming it. So if you think of Power BI, get data, that's the bronze. Technically, that's part of Power Query, but we're going to just pretend it's by itself now. Now, the transformations you do in Power Query, that's a silver layer. what you do when you're in Power BI with your data, that's the gold layer. Add DAX code. You could add the DAX code right in the service, create relationships, hide fields, add descriptions, whatever you want to do. Anything you do in Power BI is the gold layer. Golden data is the data we report on. What I love in notebooks is interfaces similar to Jupyter and Databricks notebooks. Yep. Databricks, especially because Databricks uses the Delta Parquet format. So it's exactly the same. That's why Microsoft has some great interfaces with Databricks. And Databricks is I've gotten a lot of data from Databricks for clients. So yeah, it is totally using Apache Spark, using the Python, and if you use Copilot in Bing or ChatGPT if you're a Chrome user, hello, you got something that's going to help you out there a lot. So I am learning Python. I'm finding it not too difficult to learn. I do know a few other languages, so I'm finding it pretty easy. And I'm finding it especially easy to read. I could read the code and understand what it's doing. So fortunately, there's lots of code opportunities there. Okay, there are no more questions, Savannah, so I'm going to shut up, but I will put the link to where you could download the deck. My apology for not, I can't add it directly in, but okay.
Yeah, thanks, Belinda. This was a awesome presentation. This will be posted to Dynamics User Group's YouTube, so in case you want to rewatch or anything like that, feel free. Also, I will be posting a link to that on the Meetup page, as well as Belinda's slide directly into the Meetup. So it'll all be in one cohesive place. But anyway, thank you so much, Belinda, for speaking. Thank you all for attending. We have one more session in the Power BI Extravaganza month, so I hope to see you all again next week. It's been fun. But thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys. Thank you.